Thank you, Martin, for the introduction. And to all our guests in the National Privacy Commission, CDA, and to all the participants today, which I think will be the future DPOs of our country under the ACE program of CRC and NPC. There are many definitions of privacy, but we will not talk about what is in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights based on territorial concerns on privacy, our form of communication in our civil code, and what is defined in ICCPR of the United Nations. But we will drill down on RA10173, which is the Data Privacy Act of the Philippines, that was passed in Congress in 2012. I believe most of the attendees here have heard about DPA since 2017 or maybe 2016 to present. We will simplify data privacy as much as possible in this talk. The simplest way to think about it is that people, customers, employees, or anyone else need to know what personal data organizations are collecting about them and how they are using it. Data privacy is far more than just the security and protection of personal data. It all boils down on how organizations are using that personal data. Organizations need to process personal data in an ethical and legal manner. That could mean not bombarding customers with unwanted text messages and emails, but it could also mean simply not sharing personal information with third parties without the customer's consent. It doesn't mean that marketing is now forbidden under the Data Privacy Act, but we need to be transparent about what personal data we collect and how it is being used. Many organizations recognize the significant risk of cyber attacks and data breaches, but fail to understand what else is required to safeguard what is referred to as the rights of individuals, or what we normally call as data subjects. The rights of a data subject are the right to be informed, the right to object, the right to access his data, the right to correct and rectify, the right to block or remove, the right to data portability, right to file a complaint, and also the right to be indemnified in court. So why is data privacy so important? Companies that fail to protect personal data and comply with data privacy regulations aren't just risking financial penalties. They are also risking operational inefficiencies, intervention by regulators, and most importantly, permanent loss of consumer trust. If we don't comply with the law, NPC or any supervising authority, and if you are dealing with EU corporations or individuals, they can enforce mandatory audits, request access to documentation and evidence, or even mandate an organization to stop processing personal data. As you can see on this chart, there are fines and imprisonment when we violate this act. As we know, the world keeps on changing and business models are evolving. The Economist featured an article a few years back that data is the new oil. And the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, keeps on saying that if data is the new oil, then the new currency is not actually crypto, but privacy and trust. Because today, trust is so vital when we do business. If I don't trust you, I will not do business with you. We are seeing this unfold in our eyes. That data is now being used for efficiency, creating more business and on recommendation engines, and even getting DNA samples just to do personalized marketing that J&J and Nestle are doing in Japan a few years back, which is really a data privacy concern. Every day, cyber attack is happening. We can see it in the news. Facebook, Marriott, Oxidata, and even our own Comelec has been breached due to our privacy and security hygiene. The targeted industries, if you look at this chart, is still financials. But if you look at the APAC, the number two really is educational institutions. Hackers are attacking schools so that they can get the data of our children and get to the parents. According to PwC, a breach is happening every day and every second. There are about 35 breaches that's happening every second, and mostly an attack is made not on multinational companies, but SMEs, cooperatives, and small enterprises that doesn't practice security on their enterprise. We have warned the public on contact tracing, and NPC has given circulars and advisories on online learning for the past 2 years. NPC has been penalizing online lending applications due to their shaming tactics. Ganito nakagrabe ang mga text na mga online lending na galing China. NPC back in 2017 or maybe 2018 has reprimanded Jollibee, Wendy's, ABS-CBN, Cebuana Lulier, and Globe because of data breaches. Phishing attacks are happening every day. You can see it on banks every day. A hacker can steal your identity and can open a bank account, apply for a loan or a credit card, and sometimes the heartache is you pay for that even though you didn't do a shopping spree in Shopee or Lazada. This happened on two instances, which is a case heard by the National Privacy Commission for a teacher in PRC and a DFA passport case. That is why privacy now is more important than ever. So we can be protected and data collection can be regulated. Few concepts that the data privacy laws, such as the GDPR and the Data Privacy Act of the Philippines of 2012, has introduced. So we need to be familiarized on these important key terms. So data subjects, that's all of us. Enforcement authority, in this case, is NPC. Uh, but if you are dealing with EU, with the European Union, it is called a supervising authority under the European Board, uh, which is normally called EDPB. And then another one would be a data controller. A data controller or a PIC or a PIC, personal information controller, determines the purpose of processing. This means they make decisions about what information is captured and why. Another one would be data processor or a PIP or a personal information processor. A PIP process a PI and SPI on behalf of a controller and in line with a given instruction. If a processor subcontracts some or maybe of all of the processing to another organization, that latter is referred to as subprocessor. Another key term would be classification of personal data, which are based on three types. So, number one would be privileged information. This is between husband and wife, lawyer-client relationship, doctor-patient relationship, but we will focus on the two, personal information and sensitive personal information. Uh, PI uh, is basically any information that can identify a living person. This could be as simple as a name or an account number, or could be a digital identifier, such as IP address, username, or location data, such as GPS coordinates. While SPI, there are some personal information. These are basically some personal information that are considered sensitive, as it can cause harm to an individual if leaked or misused. While each data privacy law may have its own nuances, personal data is classified as sensitive if it relates to race, color, ethnic origin, political or religious affiliation, trade union membership, physical or mental health, sex life or sexual orientation, criminal offenses, voice recording, and biometrics. Most data protection laws are built on a set of principles, which establish the foundation for everything related to data privacy and the protecting the personal data. In the Philippines, we adopted three. These are transparency, legitimate purpose, and proportionality. Or if you talk to a data privacy practitioner here in the Philippines, it's normally called TLP. So, transparency only means you should collect data, personal information, in a fair, lawful, and transparent manner. So that is why there is always consent uh, for employees, customer, and any stakeholder. Another one would be that's why there's always a privacy notice on the website that you have. But if you don't have a privacy notice, then definitely you should have one. Another one would be legitimate purpose. So, legitimate purpose, there should be purpose limitation. You should only process personal data for a specified and lawful purpose. So, for example, if your application is just contact tracing, you should just do contact tracing. Nothing more, nothing less. So, if, for example, that data is being used to another type of purpose, then definitely you are violating this principle. If you are violating this principle, uh, a data subject can file a case against you. Okay? And the last one would be proportionality. So in GDPR, it's called fairness. So dapat lahat pantay-pantay. But we need to understand that if we collect data, we also need to protect it. So the suggestion is minimize the collection. So minimize the collection so that you also minimize your exposure. Another thing is uh, data collected must be accurate, and there and you need to adhere to the basic of CIA, uh, which are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The compliance to NPC uh, is defined on these five pillars that NPC has published years ago. So, number one would be you need to appoint a data protection officer. Number two, you need to conduct a privacy impact assessment. A privacy impact assessment is basically a risk assessment identifying all your risk in terms of data protection, personal data, data life cycle, and so on and so forth, and also put identifying what would be your mitigation if that risk would happen. So this is not being submitted to the National Privacy Commission, but it is an input to the third one, which you need to submit. So the third one would be to create a privacy management program. So you need to create a plan. So when we say a plan, there is actually a template uh, that is suggested by the National Privacy Commission, but here, this is just a template. It is a suggestion. We need to look at and create a playbook. This is the normal thing that most of the companies are not really adhering, and sometimes they don't understand. A privacy manual is basically a playbook when a breach happens. When a breach happens, basically you need to identify what is the incident response, what would be your mitigation plan, who would be talking if there would be a breach that has happened, how do you report it to the National Privacy Commission, or if how do you report it um to your stakeholders, who would do the reporting, who would be your spokesperson, if it's a malware, what would be uh, your playbook, if it's a ransomware, if it's a breach, if so, those kind of things. Plus the other two, which is the fourth and the fifth, are basically the fourth one is to implement your data privacy and protection measures. The measures are identified on the number two, which is the privacy impact assessment. So the privacy impact assessment is actually the bulk of the work in your data privacy program. So you need to implement the measures that you have done. So typical measures are done through three different things. So that's what we call OPT or APT. So OPT means organizational, which are policies, or administrative, which are policies, basically policies and procedures and processes. Uh, P would be physical measures in terms of facility, plus also T would be technical. So what are your technical measures when we that you need to identify? And then the last one would be you need to also regularly exercise your bleach reporting procedures. So you need to do some tabletops, procedures, and exercises to do this. So we need to be prepared when a breach happens. These are mandatory registration with the National Privacy Commission. If you have at least 250 employees, or if you handle at least 1,000 records involving sensitive personal information, which I think all of us uh, have this, in or you have a processing system that involves automated decision making using SPI and personal information and sensitive personal information. So I think lahat naman tayo meron nito lahat. So even for example, a small company that does, for example, CRM, demand planning, emails, and so on, we need to register. And also, if you are in government, banking, non-financial institutions also, telco, BPO, education, hospitals and clinics, pharma, insurance and brokers, pre-need, direct marketing, and if you're handling loyalty programs, you are recommended to register. So that was the last slide. But we're just doing this as a shameless plug, but for NPC and CRC, because as we know, we are now part of the first batch of the institutional partners that would give the ACE program for the private sector. So NPC will not be doing any private sector initiatives anymore, and then they would concentrate on ACE 2 plus also the government. So we are now part of uh, this initiative as as the only university-backed organization in all of the institutional partner. So if you look at the privacy, any title within the title of privacy, this is hot job. So, if you look at this, in 2019, there's also a security outlook for the hottest skills in worldwide, this global survey for both privacy and security. Security uh, uh, professionals are needed for about maybe 3 million worldwide. So there's another 3 million for DPOs also. So just to give you a background on the certification program, we're doing the first step for the ACE program, for the National Privacy Commission, plus also CRC, which is also what we call the foundational DPO, which is basically the legal framework of for the ACE program. But there are some bonuses with regards to this program, which is a 5-day program, plus certification from the National Privacy Commission, plus also the ASEAN Association for Privacy, plus also there's also another certification that is bundled on this certification, which is ISO personal certification that will be given on by Germany. So there's also some basic ISO and best practices. We will also be discussing some business continuity and consumer rights, and then how to handle complaints. So, and then if you move forward, these are advanced courses for CDPP as certified data privacy practitioners. Um, and then there's also a governance specialist for audit. And then there's also a certified privacy and security engineer. So on the last part would be the master DPO. For if you want to be a CPO, so this is the course. This is basically the role of the DPO in a regional setting. So there's also cross-border transfers, treaties for APEC CBPR, EU, GDPR, and so on. There's also some topics on how to communicate through crisis, day-to-day operations, plus also there's an internship for this program. Uh, so that's the last slide that we have. So if you are interested, so to be the next DPO, so take the foundational DPO certification. These are local rates with globally recognized certifications. You cannot get anything uh, from anyone with 3 certifications, um, plus the National Privacy Commission certification for the ACE program. Dito lang to sa CRC. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I would gladly entertain them now.